what we need to have is a low-stress bicycling network. By low stress, I mean not just bike lanes on busy roads that are blocked by people who are parking and so on, but where a person can ride without the stress of heavy traffic all around them. And those routes have to be connected to each other. So we have a nice, you could say, beginning backbone of low-stress bike routes with things like the Charles River Path and the Emerald Necklace Paths and the Southwest Corridor Path. But what we don't have is connecting them all together, and we're still not reaching some other parts of the city.
So how much money would that cost?
Well, we estimated that if people contributed $20 per person per year, that would be enough funding to realize a full-scale bike network over a span of 10 or 15 years. You know, I don't want to emphasize too much what we can do right now, because the problem has been, for 7 years, since Boston turned from being completely antipathetic toward bikes, toward being bike-friendly, most of the things that we can do that are cheap and easy have been done. The big issue is getting beyond the things that are cheap and easy. Bicycle infrastructure is very inexpensive compared to, let's say, building a new transit line or building a highway. So what we really need is a quantum step to say we need to develop a bicycling network. Then we can make the real changes to make the real connections that we need, such as connecting the Muddy River Path to the Charles River Path, such as connecting the Charles River Path to South Boston, such as connecting South Boston to the rest of to downtown Boston and to Mass Ave at Melnia Cass. I mean, these are major projects that are going to take some considerable funding. When we say bike lane, in a generic sense, you know, means a space on a road for bikes. But when it's a cycle track is a protected bike lane or a separated bike lane, meaning it's physically separated from the moving traffic, separated by something vertical, either a curb or flex posts, so that it's simply an area that cars cannot get into and do not go into. So when you have an unprotected bike lane, in certain streets, that can work out fine, because if there's no parking there, there's no reason for cars to have to go into that lane, then it's pretty much a defensible space that bikes can say, this is my space and I don't have to worry about anybody using it. But on a busy commercial street, people are double parked in the bike lanes, and they're cutting across the bike lanes as they go in and out of their parking spaces, and the bike lane is not a defensible space. When people open their car doors, now any bike that's coming along is going to hit the car door and get thrust out into traffic, and it could be then run over. So the question is the space that you set aside for bikes, is it defensible? If we look at the fatalities in the Boston area in the last 10 years, more than half of them have been from collisions with trucks. If we want to enjoy the benefits that large trucks bring us in terms of deliveries, we should be willing to pay the cost so they can be done safely in an urban environment. So first is having side guards, because when trucks turn, they make such a sweeping turn. They can sweep things into the path of the rear wheels. And side guards, instead of allowing a person to be swept under those very large wheels of the truck, would push somebody out of the way. So we need national legislation that just mandates side guards for any truck that's going to operate in urban areas. I think truck drivers and trucking companies, they could do more for safety if they were motivated to. And one big way to motivate a truck driver is to make it a simple rule that if you injure a pedestrian or a bicyclist, you lose your commercial driving license for a period of time. If it's a small injury, maybe for a short period of time. If you kill somebody, for a long period of time. And not make it a criminal matter. The problem is, what we have now is we can either do nothing or we can accuse somebody of criminal negligence. It's very hard to prove anything criminal. I doubt that any truck driver intends to kill a person. And to prove that they were acting in disregard of people's safety. I mean, if they say they didn't see anybody, how can you prove that they even saw them? So let's take it away from criminal and just make it that having a commercial driving license is a privilege. And you lose that privilege if you injure somebody. Now, if truck drivers know that, I think they would be more careful. They would find ways to help them see the people that they say they didn't see. A death all of a sudden makes the people who are saying, hey, bike safety is important. If we have to wait for a death to pry a little more action out of the city every time, we're going to have a lot of deaths on our hands. So we need some clear policy from the top that says bike safety is important. So the city of Boston, has signed on to Vision Zero, and they're going to do a study of other intersections on Mass Ave, which they know are dangerous. But suppose they find, okay, here are the solutions we need, and it's going to cost a certain amount of money to do it. Where's that money going to come from? So the main reason for doing nothing is doing something costs money. Doing nothing costs nothing. So we've been doing nothing for a long time, and we don't have a budget for doing something. So bicycling has to be taken out of the realm of well, we have a Band-Aid fund, and all you're doing for bicycling is just a little paint and so on. So you can do that with the Band-Aid fund. No, it has to be treated like a real mode of transportation and a priority to do some improvements. What we spend in Massachusetts per capita on our roadway system in public funds is about $600 per person per year. That's in the gas taxes that we pay, and the registration fees, and the extra fees that trucks pay, and so on. And for transit, it's almost $400 per year in the subsidies that we give for mass transportation. And for bicycling, traditionally, it's been $1.50 per person per year. In the last few years, it's been a little bit more, but very, very close to zero. So it's not hard to see that if what you need to spend to make a good bicycling network is about $20 per person per year, I mean, you could almost get that from round-off error from the other two big players. If it's balancing the system out for the safety of bicycling doesn't have to mean the end of transit funding or highway funding with the same total transportation funding we have now. Or we could increase transportation funding. Either way, but bicycling funding has to become a priority. In Cambridge especially, it's become popular, in a few places we have it in Boston, to have what's called the leading pedestrian interval. So that means when it's time for the light to turn green for a certain street, it doesn't turn green for that street for about 4 seconds, but the walk signal goes on. So the pedestrians get a 4-second advance. And it makes all the sense in the world that bikes should also be able to go with that 4-second advance. The reason for that 4-second advance is so the pedestrians can start crossing before any cars start turning right and cutting them off. That's the purpose. So a bicyclist that isn't going right and cutting off a pedestrian, well, they're completely compliant with the purpose, and the bicyclists also don't want to get cut off by the right turning cars. So no question about it, that's the safe time for bicyclists to go. So here we have a lot of people say, oh, safety, safety, safety. It means follow the rules, follow the rules, follow the rules. But we have cases like this where the rules and safety are opposite to one another. We have this rule that says obey the light that for cars, the green, yellow, red, but we have an obvious safety principle that says when the walk signal's on, that's the safest time to go. So we have to help people understand that while obeying rules can be an important thing for safety, and in many cases it is, in some cases it's not so important. And enforcement for on bikes should focus on the rules that make a difference for safety. For instance, do you have a light? Okay, to ride a bike with no headlight at nighttime That's against the rule, and that is important for safety. First of all, we need to have a state law about that. The idea that it's not allowed to park in a bike lane in Boston and in Cambridge, but it's allowed in, this other community, that's crazy. This has to be a state law. It should be part of the state the education program, so everybody getting their driver's license knows it's a bike lane. You can't park your bike there. So Cambridge and Boston both have ordinances against that. And when an ordinance like that first passes, it's very hard to get the police to write any tickets for it, because the police, they park in the bike lanes themselves all the time. They, in their free time, most of them are not bike riders, so they don't understand. They're sympathetic with the car drivers. They understand the car drivers don't mean to hurt anybody by just double parking there. They always could before. Why can't they now? We have little infractions going on all over the time. But we need our police department to understand that this is an infraction that really does make a difference for bike safety, and so it should be in the high priority of enforcement. Getting a driver's license in America is so easy. Okay, I mean, I know what it's like because I've had kids who've gone through it. The exams that they take, it's a joke. However, the bigger emphasis is this. We always want to educate people, and it's very, very hard to educate people. The majority of the people who are going to be driving for the next 50 years are people who have already got their license. They're not going through any driver training. How are we going to educate them? And that's where we need infrastructure that educates people. Like, how do you let people know you've got to stay out of the bike lane? The main way is to put the bike lane in a place where it's inaccessible, that a car just can't get to it. When the bike lane is physically separated from the road, well, now you don't have to educate people. So relying on education is a really weak way of trying to accomplish something. Much better to do it with infrastructure, self-explaining infrastructure. When you put up a sign, hey everybody, please go slow, it's useless. If you want people to go slow, you put a speed bump. Speed bumps don't require any education. 100% of the population gets it. So in the Netherlands, there's a commitment that everybody should be able to ride bikes, which means we've got to make safe places to ride for the kids who are going to middle school and high school, for the seniors who are riding, for people who are going out and doing errands, for people who are doing anything they're doing. There has to be a safe, low-stress route to everywhere. Now, one of the ways that Amsterdam is able to continue to make improvements is that they don't give away free parking and have 50 people waiting in line for the one free parking space because it's such a bargain. They price their parking at market rate. So if I live in Amsterdam and you want to come and visit me and you're coming by car, oh, you can park your car on the street in front of my house, but you're going to be paying about $25 for the permit to do that for a day. And so that does two things. Number one, it works wonders at limiting the number of cars that come into Amsterdam because it costs so much to park. People don't try to come in, cruise around for half an hour to find that elusive free parking space. No, they just leave their car and come in by train or by bike. And then secondly, those who do come in by car and pay those very high prices, that money goes into a fund, which is then used to fund transportation improvements. And many of those transportation improvements are for bicycling. So it's a wonderful two-pronged thing. Price parking at market rate. That way the people who need to find parking can find it. But at the same time, you reduce the traffic coming in. That makes the city safer. It makes it better for buses. It makes it better for bicycling. And then you've got funding to improve the bike network, to make new bus lanes, as well as bike lanes. And that's definitely the course that congested cities like Boston, New York, San Francisco, Washington, that we should follow in the next few decades.